ask, you make this connection with cremation as being this destruction, I guess, of the body and no longer caring for the immortalization of the body. But how do you feel about cremation and the remains being used in funerary services and then entombed and preserved in that way?
Actually, that's it's a huge interest to me because cremation had a bad start in the United States. Wasn't connected to any religion, so it had to fight immediately against people who were adhering to Christianity mainly. And as burial practice started developing there, and the preservation of the body became a big thing, there was a debate in a typical American way. Is the funeral directors wouldn't allow cremation because it was cheaper and they didn't sell any caskets, services, all the things that happened with it. So what happened in the, mid 20th century is that they finally realized they could make money off cremation, and that's when all these things came out. Urns were typical, but now they're they're not a inexpensive item. So the urn, the columbarium, all these things, they have a viewing for the body still, so I guess that has helped it become part of the culture because now they can make money on it. It's terrible, but that's the history of it.
So how do you feel about the process? Because oftentimes, for example, Christian or Catholic funerals, they will kind of have a showing of the body and preserve it for that hour, sometimes 9 days, and then after the service, take the body and then it's cremated.
Yeah.
And then buried. So that kind of process of preserving the body for that long and then entombing it after it's been cremated, do you see that as no longer a concern for immortality?
I guess it depends on how they go about it. If it's the preservation of the body for the viewing and then cremating and scattering, like that scattering or that disappearance is completely different than buying a urn and having it entombed. So on one hand, it would be toward the disappearance of the body and the question of the disappearance of humanity versus this clinging on to this preservation. So it doesn't fall on one side toward me or the other because it is so different what we're doing with ashes. There have been a lot of creative solutions to this now because everyone wants to do something good with their body. They want to give back with their body. So there's a company in Florida that you can give your ashes to them. They'll mix them with concrete. They'll make this concrete object, put it in the ocean, and then it's supposed to be like a place for coral reefs to start growing again. So on the one hand, you're making a bunch of trash and putting it in the ocean, calling it good for the world. But I think people are looking for solutions that are more life-giving. But I think it's just going to take some more awareness in the world. I think global warming is really helping the debate on what happens to the body after life.
The commercialization of that industry and people constantly trying to figure out new practices to make the most money out of. Is that what you mean by, in your statement, the failures of American nationalism? Or what do you mean by the failures of American nationalism?
As an American, I feel like it's the moment that we're living in is always compared to the fall of Rome, because this is an empire that is holding on, but not very well. So, I just think that civilizations in general all over the place have invested in burial practice, but particularly in a dying empire, what happens if you don't embrace that desire for immortality anymore? But I do think it's a lot about image mostly for the states. But it's not, I don't think it's necessary. But I don't know, the connection between a falling empire and the discovery of ancient empires with their death practices is what kind of interests me.
But if cremation became popular in the United States in the 50s, that was when the States emerged as a global power, not as a failing empire. So how do you...
Oh, well, I guess the point now in history is that cremation has just overtaken burial now. So that while it was growing in the 50s, it wasn't the primary mode. So now as the tipping point happens, that's when it's happening. So.
I would like to know about the installation of the tables. Like if you had a special thought about that, because I noticed in the room that they go, like they point out in different degrees, so it goes like a wave, or I felt like a wave. If you could tell us about that.
Also, do you guys want to drink this? Because you're just sort of sitting here in front of us. I don't know if anyone's waiting for something. Is anyone waiting for something?
Looks like it's waiting for us.
Okay, well, maybe we should enjoy it.
Also, I had a question as well, similar to Erica's. I know that the piece is going to be part of the collection now. So I know that you're designing for that room, but then also, did you think about like where it would go in the permanent collection and like how it would fit? Because I know that's a temporary space, and it rotates, so that's going to have to move somewhere else in the building. Did you think about like, did you talk to the Metamonti collection like about where it would be placed? Because they are rather large objects.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like wouldn't fit necessarily anywhere.
Yeah.
Not connection has with the Metamonti collection because it's a manufacturing situ, no? Because it's like you constructed for this place.
Yes.
And so, which connection has with the collection like why this work for here? Or like this concept for this collection?
Yeah.
Yes.
You're right.
In a really Catholic way, because it's really religious, like.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so
Then I will ask you another about religion.
After you.
no, that's for you.
All right.
Oh, thank you. Let's see. Okay, yes, it's built specifically for the room here. So I worked on the dimension of the space. As a sculptor, the more space I can get, the more I would like to use. So this is the biggest by far installation I've done. But from my understanding, the second and third floor are permanent. So I think like most art, it goes into storage afterwards. So it's built just specifically for this space. I wasn't too concerned about what happened to it after. And then about the movement, this is an important part to me for any sculpture, is this kind of idea, even if it's just a single thing. I just hear like a party starting. Part of it is that the idea of death is daunting. So I wanted the object itself to almost move out into the space with you, but over you, so it has some sort of pressure on you. And so to me, there's like I like things to be in balance, but then completely out of balance, which is why the traces in the body, if you saw, are darker on the outside and lighter on the inside, and then the reflection of the bracket holding it up is apparent from the light coming from the back, darkest in the center and lightest on the outside. So that kind of one moving it together. It's when I can, I'd like a sculpture to move, like physically move, whether it's like a mechanical thing or, well, actually if it's a mechanical thing or not. But since this was a static one, I wanted to try to maintain that sort of collection. Is half Italian, half American, and for me, they just said, make your idea and then we'll discuss it. And that was the idea I was most interested in at the time. It started just with looking and researching burial practices around the world, but it became more specific because I feel like it's almost progression marker of the U.S. history from the Civil War to now, and it's very easy to see the progression and the debate and its relationship to commercialism in the history of it. So I proposed a project and they said okay, and that's kind of how it goes. But I mean, just seeing the collection, most of you have been to it already or not? Yeah. And I saw it just this last 2 weeks ago, but I really see a difference in the two floors and what they're addressing and what the artists are thinking about. So it seemed okay to have American piece from an artist in the United States. This is what's close to me. So, and it's more interesting to discuss it outside of the United States, I think, because we don't have a lot of perspective oftentimes. So.
What do you see as the relationship between them being sculptures and them being an installation? Would you not want the tables to be sort of sold separately and then separately displayed? Or is it really specific that they have to be in the 13?
Yep. They have to be together. Mm-hmm. And then it's enough for them, they're spread out as far as they can in the room. So I wanted it to be specific to the size of the place here, because that allows the motion, and then it allows the disappearance of it. So I can't see them separately. Yeah. Yeah, but
in terms of curatorial things, you were talking about the way that the halos are strongest on the inside. But I was wondering why they're displayed on a matte wall, because I felt that if you used if the wall was a gloss paint, you'd get much more of a glow effect of the halo. And I felt like, although it was much stronger on the inside one, it was. I was wondering if that you were talking about the 13 pulses and all this. The central one has a halo, and there's kind of a religious element to it. It's, the reason you're getting the halos from the two lights on the back, but they're focused on the central one, so the further out ones don't really have the halo so much. But from reading your the stuff in the catalogue, I was expecting to more of a stronger reaction. How do you feel about it?
Well, I mean, the first time I've seen the pieces together is here too. So I'd seen them the most. I'd seen together were 5 before I got here, and they did all glow. It just depends on the amount of space that's possible. So because they're close to the lighting here, it's not possible. But there was room on the center object too.
Yeah.
Still, I think just the hint of one doing it was okay for me.
Yeah.
Ideally, how much space would you have for the pieces?
The same width of wall, 60 feet. Maybe just a little bit taller. That's it. Just for the light. It's kind of I built it for the space, so I feel like it fits in the space. But yeah, that would be the only thing is the light. Yeah, all sculptures are like that.
Can I just ask you one question? Why does the sculpture not move? Because I was discussing with Claire and I would love it. Like, it's probably just my personal preference, but I really wanted them to suddenly move. And would you want them to, or would that be something you'd want to play with again? Because I know your sculptures move. So
Yeah.
do you feel in any way that it might have failed this project or not? Do you feel like no, they need to be still?
I don't feel like no, they need to be still, which is the same issue I have with Dissolver. Because if in an ideal world, all 96 of them would have moved, but in a real world, only one could move. So So for here, since I knew they weren't going to be moving, I tried to get the most movement as possible with a still object.
Almost with the colour and stuff.
Yeah. No, it would be amazing if they could all just out of shoot. Yeah, that is one of the, and when I was working on the brackets themselves, I wanted them to suggest that they might have come from the wall, but not so
Some
much.
kind of hinge.